Did any of the following actually happen as described in these scary stories? Dogman Danger in Dolores. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I live in Colorado, not too far from a little town called Dolores. It's right near the Canyon of the Ancients Museum, a great place to study the culture of the local native peoples. It's always been a nice area to live near. They have the Galloping Goose Historical Society right inside town. That's a place where you can go to ride the actual Galloping Goose Train number 5 and take a trip back in time. Once, not too long ago, I took a different kind of trip back in time when I saw what looked like a prehistoric dog-headed caveman running on his hind legs right along with my car just outside of the town of Dolores. I was telling this story to my friends, telling them it took place on the edge of town. Looking at Google Maps, though, I can see that it actually took place just past the edge of town. Whatever, I'm not changing the title of this story. This is about how I got menaced and threatened by the Dogman of Dolores. Now, Dolores, Colorado is nestled in a little valley between ridges of scrubland. There are trees here and there, but it's not forested. In most of your videos, you seem to be depicting Dogman living in deeply wooded areas, where it would presumably be easier for him to hide. For a creature the size of the one I saw to remain unseen just outside of Dolores, Colorado, he'd have to hunch over pretty low and hide behind all the not very tall scrub brush and bushes in the sandy dirt. It seems unlikely to me that such a creature could subsist in this place, and that's why, even now, I have a hard time believing what happened to me. Railroad Avenue cuts straight through Dolores, and that's what I was driving down that evening in a distracted way. It was just after dark, but I don't remember the exact time. Whatever sunset was about 2 weeks ago, add 15 or 20 minutes to that, and it's approximately when this happened. It was mostly nighttime, but it hadn't gotten 100% dark enough yet to say that dusk was completely over. There was still just the faintest bit of color in the sky, and I remember that specifically because my first glimpse of the monster was it silhouetted against a very deep blue, verging on dark purple sky. That's why I noticed it. The black figure of a humanoid standing stark against the monochrome reddish-blue almost night sky. When I looked directly at it, it looked directly at me. I saw it start, jump just a little bit in the air upon realizing that we were locking eyes. I could see its eyes glowing in its otherwise completely darkened face, and I could see its animal ears standing up on the top of its head. Animal ears? Eye shine? Human beings don't have either of those things, and yet this large creature appeared to be mainly in the shape of a huge muscular man. Whatever it was, the figure took off running. Not running away from me, but running directly toward me. I floored the gas pedal, but I was going to have to pass closer to the immense man-like thing before I could speed past him, since he was running toward me from the front. I was screaming bloody murder already, cursing up a storm, as I panicked, unable to believe that I had just driven out of Dolores, Colorado, and into the first act of a horror movie double feature. The creature was going to run into the side of my car headlong if he kept his current speed and trajectory. I really didn't want that to happen for a whole slew of different reasons, so I swerved off the road, losing control of the car for a few brief moments and barely recovering before sliding into a random tree. Without losing a bit of speed, I skidded and swerved back onto the highway, and I thought I'd gotten away from the creature. Looking in my rear-view mirror, though, I was able to see the thing almost in its entirety for the first time. It had a head, just like some dark-furred wolf or canine. It was running after my car, on its hind legs, in the way a man would, but it was making far better time than any human being in all of history. I was driving the speed limit, assuming that would be more than fast enough to put some distance between us, when I caught sight of the thing in my peripheral vision, and I turned to see it running alongside the car. It had already caught up, something that shouldn't have been possible. I took the car above the speed limit, hoping that if I got stopped, the officer would arrest the dogman instead of me. That manimal appeared to run sideways off the road and into the scrub. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that it had given up the chase. But it had done no such thing. It was still chasing my car, only it was running off the road, on dirt that was no doubt easier on its giant canine feet than the blacktop of Railroad Avenue. I could see it there, on the other side of the scrub trees, on the side of the road, running on its hind legs, going the identical speed of my car. And then came the most sickening and upsetting moment of this entire experience. While running just as fast as my car, without the aid of any engine or wheels, that dogman turned, looked me right in the eye, and then, I swear it grinned. Either that, or it was pulling its lips back to bare its teeth at me. I nearly fainted right at the steering wheel. I saw spots all around the edges of my vision. The dogman kept staring at me, even after I broke eye contact. No matter where I looked, the image of that hateful thing glaring at me was inescapable. It was a nightmare image, the scariest thing I ever saw. I wake up from dreams seeing that image again in my mind. My cheeks are entirely wet with tears dripping off my face each time I wake up from that dream. It makes me cry, even in my sleep. It's that terrifying an image. It was the moment when I stopped believing that the world was a beautiful place made for us humans to live in. Seeing that bipedal dog-headed man able to run just as fast as a combustion engine could carry my car weakened my mind and my resolve. Then, seeing that dogman turn and look me right in the eye, smug in its certainty that my time was over and its time was about to begin, well, seeing that took my mind and my worldview and snapped them into pieces. What was I to do? Humanity has spent thousands of years creating machines and techniques to make us greater as a species than any of the other animals. And then, here comes the dogman to strip our dominance from us and laugh in our faces. The dogman doesn't need machinery. The dogman doesn't need armor. The dogman doesn't need weapons. And the dogman doesn't need to be as smart as we are. He's so dominant over us, he doesn't even need to try hard to be our master. The reason we still are able to rule our own settlements is that we still outnumber them. But for how long? I heard the sound of a police alarm, and apparently the dogman did too. It took off, this time in earnest, while I got pulled over and ticketed. I tried to ask the officer if he had seen the dogman without, actually asking him if he had seen the dogman. I couldn't get any kind of answer out of him, so I dropped the subject and I took my ticket. After he got back in his police car, he tailed me for a good mile to make sure I was staying under the speed limit before finally passing me and zooming off. Little did he know that I was more than happy to have him there behind me, keeping the dogman from chasing me any more that night. I've told you my facts, now I want to tell you my opinion. I think that some large entity, whether it be government or corporate, should invest in finding and identifying the dogman. Perhaps some secret branch of the government already has, although that's purely speculation on my part. Our species needs to take precautions that we are not overruled by the coming of this new barbarian race of wolfmen. We don't want civilization to perish merely because we can't run as fast as they can. On an individual basis, any dogman can defeat any human in any number of ways. But when we band together, nothing and no one can defeat us. Nothing from Earth, at least. And I don't believe the rumors that Dogman is from space. This is an exceptional creature, make no mistake about it. We might be talking about the deadliest land animal on the planet. But it still lives on this planet. So it can, eventually, be defeated by us. Maybe if we spent less time fighting each other and more time using our brains for constructive purposes, then Dogman might have been classified as an officially recognized species by now. We would already have the beginnings of safety protocols in place. We would already have the beginnings of a plan to keep these creatures away from human habitation. As it is, we don't even know how bad the problem might be. We don't know how to gauge Dogman habituation levels yet. We really don't even know what to look for at this early stage. Unless there is some secret government operation in place to protect us from the Dogman, and I have no evidence that there is, it seems to me that we are placing ourselves far too much at risk. I recognize that I'm basing all of this thinking on one sighting of one creature, and that I may be making a number of false assumptions. For all I know, the Dogman I saw was the last one on Earth. Also, just because my gut instinct tells me that Dogman is a natural creature, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily correct. What if it is an alien or interdimensional visitor? What if that is the reason no Dogman body has been found yet? What if the one that raced me on Railroad Avenue was a holographic projection? What if it was a psyops kind of thing, and they were testing new technology on me? What if I accidentally ingested some poison or intoxicant earlier in the day, and I just hallucinated the Dogman? I can't rule that out. Sure, it seemed very real at the time, but I was alone in the car, and nobody else saw what I saw. So, what if I didn't really see it? There are so many factors to consider. I'm trying not to let myself start believing in any one of my theories. I want to keep my mind open to all possibilities. Maybe I will see more or learn more and be able to be more certain in the future, but for now, all I can say with certainty is that my eyes convinced my brain that we both witnessed Dogman danger in Dolores. Don't go anywhere, we've got another Dogman story for you in a second, but first, today's executive producer is Helen Ivanoff. That's a fact we're quite proud of. In fact, I'd say our egos swelling, because there's nobody that's greater than Helen. Please join us in thanking Helen Ivanoff for making this episode possible. And thanks, we sent her links to see our secret uncensored Sunday night Dogman stories, far too wild to ever run on this channel. You can see them too. Just join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com, or do what Helen Ivanoff did and click the join link under this or any of our videos. And now, let's jump to what our members help us do, and that is to tell you another Dogman story. And this one is called Occupied by Dogman, aka the Dogman Infestation. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I bought a property out near Yellow Pine, Idaho a few months before the COVID situation hit, and I had to close it up. only returning to the place recently. My wife and kids were supposed to be coming out a few days after I opened it up and made sure everything was copacetic. I told them to stay away though, once I learned that our property had, in our absence, become infested with a particularly heinous kind of pest. It became infested with all different shapes and sizes and colors of Dogman. I don't want to repeat myself, but I want it clear that I am talking about more than one creature and more than just a family of them. I have seen a 10-foot tall, very dark black furry Dogman, and I've seen a 5.5-foot tall one that was mostly bald, with a hairy chest and hair covering his privates. I've seen a female of the species who was taller than I was and had at least 4 doggy teats on the front of her. I've seen one with a long straight tail. I've seen others with no tails and human-like backsides. I've seen a gray Dogman, a brown Dogman, a tan Dogman, a black Dogman that I told you about before, and a salt and pepper. I saw one from a great distance that seemed almost 14 feet tall, and I saw one run away from my parked car as I approached that couldn't have been even 5 feet tall. I've awakened to see one of the creatures looking into my bedroom through the window. I've heard them howling in the woods near to the house. I got chased from the front door to my car one day, barely making it inside and slamming the door before the Dogman ran right over my car and back into the woods. They get me rattled. They never seem to let up. These creatures, it's not like I can see them around me all the time, but by now I know that they're there. They'll only reveal themselves to you at the very last second, remaining hidden until it's no longer possible, and creating a startling and intimidating presence that can drive you to paranoia and a state of nerves. My time at the house reminded me of my first apartment I was able to afford when I moved away from my parents as a teenager. It had cockroaches living everywhere, and I had not yet learned of the miracle that is boric acid. Each time I would see one of those ugly, long motorboat roaches running around in my side view, it would stress me out to no end. Well, my visit to my property was like that old apartment on steroids. Those Dogmen are just as creepy as roaches or rats, just as disgusting, and just as fast when they dart from hiding spot to hiding spot. On top of all that, though, obviously, is the sheer terror of knowing that you are vastly outnumbered by these larger-than-life pests, who could very well hunt humans for all I know. I had stored some dry foodstuffs in the garage, only to return and find the bags torn apart. Rice was all over the floor of the garage. It looked like the bags had been ripped open with knives, but I don't think any human being did that. I think it was the Dogman who did that, or at least one of them. And they didn't do it to eat the food, they just spilled it all over on the ground. It seems they did it for some other reason. Perhaps to threaten or warn me. Perhaps just because they could. I've read people online insisting that Dogman do in fact have us on their menu. I've read and heard others who poo-poo the idea of it, though, insisting that Dogmen are almost never dangerous to human beings. I don't see how either case could be effectively argued, since we'd have to catch a Dogman before we could figure out what his diet is. Speaking of which, I have been talking to a group of people interested in renting the place to attempt to prove the existence of the Dogman. The trouble is, the individuals involved want to take down several of the creatures if they can. They want bodies for science to examine. I would rather they rework their plan to drug and capture the creatures and examine them that way. In fact, I'd like them to just remove them from my property, but I don't want to start a Dogman war. I think if any of the animals were taken down violently, it could set off a chain of events too drastic for their crew to handle. If this company can't produce a better plan of attack, then we may have to begin the search for a different renter or buyer. My ideal situation would be to rent to someone who can rid the land of a pack of them without injuring any in the process. Plan B would be to just sell the land and get away from there permanently. I have set up some trap cameras around the house, but only 4 of them. I bought 10, but as I was putting them up around the area, I began to get that feeling I always get just before I see one of the creatures running around. Only this time, when I looked around, I couldn't see anyone there. I know they were there, but they had to have been hiding and looking out, watching me. They had to have seen me put the trap cameras up, or at least the last of them. I jumped in the car and got the heck out of Dodge when I got that feeling. And so far, I haven't been back yet. You have to understand, this property is so overrun with dogmen that they aren't only nocturnal anymore. If your apartment gets taken over by roaches, they stop coming out only in the darkness. They get brazen. They run wherever they want, whenever they want. That's what it's like at that house and the property around it. You never feel safe, even when you're not watching them scuttle by. The dogmen are watching you cowering, terrified of them, knowing they surround you at all times. So, I don't know if my cameras have gotten any pictures or video of these creatures yet. I'll check the next time I have the courage to visit the land. If I do capture proof of these monster dogmen, what should I do with the images or video? Are there any scientists studying this kind of thing? Conversely, would anyone pay money for a legit photo of the dogman? It doesn't matter right now, because I don't know if I caught anything in those trap cams, but I really wish I could come up with a plan to get out of this mess. We sunk almost all of our money into that land, and now it's too dangerous to use. Plus, we can't sue anyone to get our money back since Dogman doesn't yet officially exist in a legal sense. I feel as though I'm reinventing the wheel, because there is no rule book to explain what you do when you discover that you are suffering from a Dogman infestation.
Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it. You can become a channel member by clicking the join link below. Then you can check our community page to find the links to 10 hours or more of secret, uncensored Dogman stories too wild to be told on this channel. Your other option is to join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. That's Peter's homemade club, where he will personally email you the links as well as occasional secret club messages. You may also be included as an executive producer in a future episode. You have a scary experience you want to tell us about? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com, or else call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LESS-SCARY. The machine cuts off every few minutes, so if you have a long story, please keep calling back and we'll piece it together later on. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.